With the announcement of a new class coming to ESO, a lot of old players are returning to their setups and a lot of new players are joining in on the fun. Whether you deleted everything and need to start over or you're coming to ESO for the first time, here are my top 5 things beginners should know and try to do in ESO. Number 1, when you're first joining ESO, it can seem like a very overwhelming game with many classes, builds, and items to explore. The first question on many people's minds is, what build should I do? With ESO, this isn't as simple as just thinking thief, mage, warrior, healer, etc. In ESO, you have to craft and create your own items if you're actually going to want to do some good damage or have great resistance. And that comes at the cost of skill points that are used for offensive and defensive abilities because you also have to use them for crafting. Luckily, in ESO, you can transfer items between characters and all of your characters actually share one unified crafting bag. Items have 2 qualities, traits and enchantments. However, when you learn these new enchantments and traits, only that character knows them, so your best bet is to make your first character whatever they may be, whether it's a mage, bowman, or warrior, and make them also your first craft master. This way they know how to build and create everything, and then you can make it for your other characters or your friends' characters. It's a great opportunity to build a character that's not so focused on PvP or PvE, and you can just kind of absorb the story. Personally, I like to make my craft master a tank. That way they have a lot of health and they don't die as much, and I can just kind of enjoy the game even if I do decide to go do some dungeons. Enchantments are learned in a similar way as alchemy in Skyrim. So you find the runes around the world and combine them to discover their type, and then combine the types for an enchantment. Crafting traits in ESO require you to take an item that is a trait you like and research the item to learn that said trait. Then you'll have that trait to apply to the new weapon or armor. Now the difference here is that an enchantment may add fire damage or absorb health, while a trait may increase your overall damage or even strengthen your enchantment. My second tip is, obviously you could jump in and make whatever character you want and not think too much about it, but if you really want to get far in ESO, you're going to want to make sure you take note of the racial buffs. For example, if you're making a warrior character, you might want to start with a red guard because they get a stamina recovery and base stamina boosts. However, if you're paying attention to our first tip, I said to make your first character a craft master. And coincidentally, the orc race actually gets a boosted amount of XP in the crafting line. So when you destroy an item to learn its trait or whatever, you get XP for that. And orcs get a little bit more than everybody else. And ESO actually gives you the ability to change your race later on, but it costs real money, aka crowns. Or if you're an ESO Plus member, which is about $15 a month, you can just save up your crowns to do that. But why not just get it right the first time? So research the different abilities and races. Now our third tip relates to combat. In ESO you get 2 bars of full skills that you can use and switch back and forth. Now when you switch them though, it's actually going to switch the weapon that you're using as well. So I recommend when you're first getting into ESO, maybe consider doing a single bar build. Don't worry about filling up your primary bar and your secondary bar, just fill up the primary one. Add mainly offense and maybe 1 or 2 defensive things such as armor or a healing spell. Some people in PvP actually prefer to do 1 bar builds, which does simplify the game a lot, but if you're doing PvP, you're going to want to be very specific about the different abilities that you use. But in PvE, you can pretty much get away with doing a 1 bar easily. Tip number 4 brings us back to the beginning of character building and choosing your role type. Choosing a specific role type will make your first experience with ESO very easy and not complex because you don't know what items you're going to use and which ones you aren't going to use. Tanks are based in health and being able to take a lot of damage, while DPS is about giving out a lot of damage and having a lot of attack or spell power. Then a healer obviously is going to want to be able to assist or support the team members. This could be by actually giving health or giving different buffs and attributes. And again, you can always change up your abilities and skills and weapon types later, but during your first encounter with ESO, I recommend choosing a role just to make navigation easier. As a new player or a veteran, trying out something new in ESO can be very overwhelming, so the first and easiest way to determine whether or not you're going to use stamina or magic is to simply think about your weapon of choice. This will be our 5th tip. Are you going to be using a melee weapon like a dagger or a sword, or are you going to use ranged like a staff or a bow? Now this might seem like an obvious step, but it's definitely an important one because ESO bases which resource replenishes based off of the weapon that you're using. So your swords and bows are technically warrior type weapons and they replenish your stamina, while your staffs will replenish your magicka. And if you're doing kind of a mixed build or want to be out there a little bit, you can always add an enchantment that'll add in the opposite attributes. So if you have a sword or a bow build that normally replenishes stamina, but you have some magicka based skills, you can always add an enchantment that'll absorb magicka from the enemy. That might be a little complicated for now, but just remember, if you're a warrior using a sword or a bow, you're going to basically be replenishing stamina, and if you're a mage using a staff, you're replenishing your magicka. And this all goes a little bit deeper when it comes to the different damage types in ESO, such as frost, fire, disease, or poison, and the differences there. Check out my other video explaining ESO damage types, and ESO can seem super overwhelming, so as I learn, I try to keep each tutorial simple and easy to digest or remember. Thank you, be safe out there, much love.